Hey guys, John Ryan here, and welcome to my first extended length podcast called Must Know People. It's a local podcast where local people are the stars. Now, before we jump into this week's episode, if you know someone who you think we should be talking to on the pod, let us know. You can always email me at john@carrollbroadcasting.com. That's John with an H, by the way. john@carrollbroadcasting.com. And with that, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it. And enjoy this week's episode of Must Know People. This is Must Know People. I'm John Ryan with you. Of course, we continue our series of talking with local people, making them the stars of the whole broadcast. Today, it's very exciting. We have a appeals court judge with us today on the program. Gina Badding is joining us. First of all, Gina I call you Gina. Is it Your Honor, Judge Badding?
Gina is perfectly fine.
Okay, I didn't want to overstep my boundaries.
Not at all.
So, and also, by the way, we're recording here in the Carroll County Courthouse, which I don't think I've ever been in this room before. Been in Carroll 30 years. I've never been in this. It's a little nerve-wracking, I got to admit.
That's a good thing you've never been here.
Probably.
Although that means that you haven't been called for jury duty, so.
Yes, that is very true. I think I got called once, but I never got called in.
Sure.
So, this is kind of my first time in here. You work here, so this is kind of crazy. What was your first feeling walking into this place?
I first was in this courtroom when I was in high school, not because I was in trouble, but for mock trial. It was a new thing that was started back when I was in high school. John Worden, who's the Carroll County attorney, was our mock trial coach. And so before our competition, he had us do our trial in this courtroom. Mm-hmm. So that was my first time in the courtroom, and it was pretty neat. Years and years later, I got to come back here as a judge. Well, first an attorney, then a judge.
So one of his students is now the person he's probably arguing cases in front of, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, let's start back. You grew up in Carroll. Tell me about that. What street did you grow up on? Tell me about your mom and dad, your family, everything.
Yep. So we grew up, my grandpa had a farm north of town, about 100 acres, right near the municipal golf course. Mm-hmm. So my grandparents' house is that long lane if you go up next to the softball, baseball fields that are out there.
Sure.
My aunt lives kind of in the middle of the hill, and then my parents and I were at the bottom of the hill. So that's where I grew up as a child.
What's your maiden name?
Stentz.
Stentz.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So what was it like growing up in Carroll back then? I assume Carroll has changed a lot.
Yes, it's expanded quite a bit, but it was the most wonderful childhood. So I'm so happy that I get to give my children that same sort of childhood. We were surrounded by family all the time. My mom was a teacher for 40 years. She worked first at Arweva and then IKM Manning.
What'd she teach?
She taught English and French, high school. Yep. And
so you know French.
Oh, a little bit. I'm not going to embarrass myself.
So what did your dad do?
And then my dad was a printer at Stone Printing. He was a teacher early on in his career. They taught together in Omaha for about 10 years at a Catholic school there. And then they moved back and he started working at Stone Printing. So I grew up at Stone's. I went there after school. I'd sit at the counter, do my homework, have a pop, and then eventually I started working there. My brother worked there for a long time. I have uncles and aunts who worked there. So actually just this morning I was at the funeral of Tom Chase, who was the owner of Stone's.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it was very sad to send him off, but he had a long, wonderful life.
So you're multi-generational here in Carroll.
Yes.
How many generations does that go back? Do you know? Have you ever traced that?
No, I haven't. I believe my grandparents moved here when my mom, I'm going to mess it up, junior high, maybe middle school. So yeah, just my grandparents and then parents and me.
Okay. So you must have liked Carroll. Obviously, you came back here for reasons that we'll talk about here in just a little bit. But you said your first real job was working at Stone's?
Yep.
So that's working for your dad.
Yeah.
How about a job that wasn't working for the family? Do you remember that first job?
I worked at Tony's restaurant. I did waitressing there. And then those were my only two jobs in high school. And then once I went to college, I worked at the hospital.
What did that teach you, your first job? I always love to ask that question of people because everybody's got that little job that they start out in, and that really shapes a lot of things in the future.
Yeah. So my job at Stone's primarily was collating. So back before they had machines that would do that work.
You were the collator.
Right. So you would walk in a line, all day long, hour after hour, and put those pages inside one another. So it left a lot of time for daydreaming, because it was before, I didn't have AirPods or podcasts to listen to. So it was a long, long day, and it taught me that I wanted to do more with my life, for
Back
sure.
in the stone ages of the 80s and the 90s, right? Yeah.
Right.
So talk about school. What were you like in school? Good on academics, I assume. You're a judge now, so I would assume that's pretty safe, right?
Yeah. I was, my best subjects were English and social studies and things that involved a lot of writing and reading. My worst subjects were math and science, so I knew I wasn't going to go into the medical field or anything like that. I was pretty involved in music. I played the piano and clarinet and viola. I was involved in theater, really liked all of that stuff. So not very athletic at all.
Yeah, but hey, as long as you're involved, right? Are your kids involved in a lot of things when they're in school?
Yeah.
What are their ages, by the way?
They're super busy. My oldest is 17. His name is Fletch. His full name is Robert Badding, but we call him Fletch.
Cool nickname.
Yeah, thanks. My husband's favorite movie is Fletch and Chevy Chase. But I'm like, I don't know if we can give our kid just that name to go by.
Nickname, fine. Given name, no. It's not appearing on the birth certificate.
Yep. So he's named after his grandpa, Bob Badding. And then our second oldest is Charlie. He's 15. He'll be 16 at the end of October. Lucy is 12. And then Baxter, our youngest, is 10. So
So you got them stretched out for a while. You haven't hit the college years yet with them yet.
No, not yet. Fletch is a junior. So he and Charlie both run cross country, but their main love is soccer. All my kids love soccer. So they're all involved in that. And then they all play piano. Fletch and Charlie don't take lessons anymore, but I had them do it up until high school. Baxter and Lucy are still taking lessons. And then they're all involved with All Strings Attached with Becky Winshuttle, who taught me viola back in the day.
Yeah.
So
They're like, yep, you have the same teacher that I did back then. So
Yep.
We forgot your husband.
Oh, Tony.
Tell me about Tony. Yeah.
So Tony grew up here. He is a true multi-generational family here. I don't know how long the Baddings have been here.
If you're a Badding, you're probably related to at least half the county, I'm thinking, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, that's true. So he was a year ahead of me in high school, but we didn't start dating until actually my first year of law school. I lived with his cousin all throughout college, and then he got a job in Cedar Rapids. We went to school at Iowa. He got a job in Cedar Rapids and then started hanging out with us, and then we started dating. But his uncle Nick just recently retired, although he's still working at Badding. So Tony was named president of Badding Construction just this past year. So I'm super proud of him.
Their name is all over the place. They've built a lot of great things here. Between the two of you, I mean, you're a judge and he's running a construction company. You got to be running 20 different ways all the time, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's,
And then running to soccer matches and running to all that other stuff, right?
we forget kids sometimes. Luckily, we have a lot of friends in town who know that we're forgetful and will pick them up and take them home for us.
Oh, that's the Badding kids. We'll just pick them up and take them home.
Yep.
So what led you to law? Did you know right away that you wanted a career as a lawyer?
I wouldn't say right away. I gave a speech a couple years ago for this organization called PEO, and it happened to be right around the same time as our 25-year high school reunion. And I got this packet of letters that everybody in my class had written themselves when we were seniors. And so I pulled out my letter, and in that I talked about wanting to be a lawyer, a criminal defense attorney, to be specific. And I don't, looking back, I don't remember having that specific of an idea in my mind, but the letter surprised me because it must have been there all along. When I was in college, I was an English and religion major. And I really enjoyed my religion classes and thought maybe briefly about becoming a professor. But I talked to one of my religion professors, and he kind of steered me towards law school.
So you'll be in business a lot more defending people than you will being a professor of religion, right?
Yeah. So, it was, I think I always had it in the back of my back of my mind and kind of, did those English and religion majors because it seemed like a good preparation for law school, which I really think it was.
So you wanted to go into criminal law.
I did.
It was not civil law, because a lot of folks are exactly the opposite. They want to do civil law, but they don't want to have anything to do with criminal law.
Yeah.
What was the difference for you?
I loved murder mysteries, those type of things when I was a kid, and reading books and watching shows. It just was always very interesting to me. And I felt, and I still feel like, criminal law was an area where you could really make a difference in someone's life. So that was kind of my focus early on, but my path didn't necessarily lead me there. I did a little bit of criminal defense work when I was practicing, but not exclusively by any means.
So that's interesting that you went to the criminal side of things instead of like just civil. So tell me about college, getting prepared for law school. How tough is that? Because becoming a lawyer is a pretty daunting task educationally.
Yeah, I took pretty general majors, but really a lot of being a lawyer is interpreting, the written word, being able to write persuasively. And so English and religion majors really prepared me for that.
I bet. Yeah. I never thought about that.
Yeah.
I bet it did. So what was the hardest class getting ready for law school for you at the University of Iowa?
When I was in college well, it wasn't getting ready for law school, but I didn't take French my senior year of high school, and you needed 4 years of a foreign language at that time for college requirements. So I had to take French for one semester my first year at Iowa, and it was a 7 a.m. class Monday through Friday. So that was my lowest grade, and I had my mom on the phone constantly trying to help me.
The worst schedule possible for a college student, 7 a.m. classes, 5 days a week?
Yep. It
Wow.
was terrible.
Okay. So tell me about school. Were you one of those kids that you came back every weekend to Carroll? Did you stay at school? I mean, talk about your life in college.
I didn't come back at all. I think my first time back was Thanksgiving, my first year. My brother was 2 years ahead of me at Iowa, so I had him. I, spent a lot of time with him. But our parents, really encouraged us to stay at school and, get involved there and make our lives there. So we would come back for, holidays, occasional weekends here and there. I came back my first summer after school, but the rest of the time I just stayed at Iowa, and I loved Iowa City. I still love it.
You must have loved it. What did you love about it? What did you love about your college years, period?
Well, it's such a selfish time, right? But in a good way. It's one of the only times in your life where you can really focus on yourself and kind of, do what you need to do and what you want to do without worrying about other people necessarily.
Yeah.
I loved all of the classes that I got to take, all of the cultural opportunities that were in Iowa City, the friends that I made along the way, many of whom I'm still in contact with. So just everything about the college experience was wonderful.
You get to make your own rules,
right,
for the first time. Yeah, that's fantastic. But let's talk about law school. You knew you wanted to get into law school, and probably University of Iowa. Natural fit, of course. Yeah. Was there any thought of going anywhere else to law school?
Yep, I applied to Drake as well and got into Drake. I decided to stay with Iowa because like I said, I loved Iowa City. I was familiar with the town. My brother was still there. He was in med school at Iowa at the time. And then I had quite a few friends who were in pharmacy school at Iowa. So they were kind of finishing up their last years of pharmacy school while I was starting my first year of law school, which looking back, maybe that wasn't the best decision for me because I started my first year of law school still thinking like I was, in college. And so it was a little, I needed to buckle down more my first year of law school than I maybe did.
So not a lot of football games probably once you got to law school.
Well, I still tried, but
Okay.
that first semester was rough.
Talked about law school. Everybody's got this impression in their head, and I do too. I don't know if you know the movie The Paper Chase.
I haven't seen that.
Or anything like that. But when you see movies about law school, okay, Legally Blonde.
Yeah.
That is, I hope that is not what law school is like.
Yes and no. There were
Really?
there were some classes where we had seating charts and the professor had, even our like pictures on the seating chart, and so that they could call on us during class to talk about the cases that we were supposed to read. And that was shocking to me, because Iowa is undergrad is such a large school. You're in these huge lectures and you don't have that individual focus and attention on you. So some classes were certainly designed to kind of put you on the spot, but others were not. So it's not quite as intimidating as they show in the movies, but there's a little bit of truth to it.
How hard is it, truthfully, the academic work and all of that? I mean, is it studying constantly and you're always up all hours of the night doing that? Is it like that?
It's hard. It's very hard.
So I'll tell you, broadcasting school was not like that.
I mean, I wouldn't want to go back and do it again, although I really enjoyed all the things that I learned. But a lot of our classes had just one test. So that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself at the end of the semester. It's learning to think in a different way, which, takes a little bit sometimes. Learning to write in a different way. So it's tough, but the subject matter was really interesting. Regrets, like looking back, I wish I would have taken a taxation course. I wish I would have taken a real estate course, but I stayed away from those because I was worried that I wouldn't do well on them. But those are kind of the practical things that I saw right out of the gates when I started practicing.
Give me a circumstance where you were questioning, maybe, because everybody questions what they're doing there. Is this really the path I want to follow? Was there any moments like that for you?
The first semester, I think, getting through that first semester, learning how to study, learning to kind of separate my life as an undergrad from my life in law school. And then I would say my third year of law school, we started interviewing pretty early on. I think the first semester, interviewing for our permanent jobs after. And I was looking to go anywhere that would take me. I was interviewing with a lot of big corporate law firms, and I was not having hardly any success at all. In fact, it was so bad that the career services advisor called me into her office, and I thought she was going to give me a pep talk, but instead she sat me down and said, I think these places that you're applying for, they're not the right fit for you. And she was completely right. It hurt at first because, what I heard in my head was, you're not ever going to get a job after spending 3 years of school, time in school and money. But I think she was right. Like, what I needed was not a big corporate law firm, but something smaller and more focused on direct work with clients and helping people, which is what I really enjoyed all along.
That, I don't care, rejection in anything is hard to deal with. How did you deal with that?
I cried, I, talked to my friends, went for a run, and then I kind of, picked myself back up and reevaluated where I was applying and what I was trying to do. And after I did that, I applied for a position as a law clerk for the district court in Cedar Rapids, and I got that job. And I think that's where it really solidified for me the dream of becoming a judge. I had maybe had that in the back of my mind, but as a law clerk, you're able to work directly with these really impressive people and, seeing what they were able to do and how they approach cases, really made me want to have that for myself someday.
Impressive people. I love that phrase. Give me some names. Impressive people that have influenced you.
Yeah. So
up to this point.
Yeah. So probably my biggest influences in my legal career have been the judges that I worked with early on. So Van Zimmer, he's a judge from Benton, Iowa. He was one of the first judges I worked with. John Miller, he's a judge in Washington, Iowa. He was another judge that I worked with. They were both on the Court of Appeals, and I worked for them as a staff attorney for about 6.5, almost 7 years. They retired midway through my time at the Court of Appeals as a staff attorney, so then I worked with Judge Anu Vaitheswaran and Judge Rick Doyle, and each one of those people shaped the way that I approach cases now, and they shaped the way that I approached cases as an attorney, too.
How hard of a boss were they? Were they demanding on you?
No. The Court of Appeals has a huge caseload, and so there is an expectation that, we get our work done as quickly as possible and as thoroughly as possible. but we also really strive to create a welcoming, fun work environment. And so they did the same thing. So no, they were wonderful bosses for sure.
So you're ruining my impression of that. The law firm is like John Grisham books, all of them. It's not like that.
No, not for me. Not for me. It wasn't.
The FBI has never approached you to solve big crimes or anything like that.
No.
So if you had to pick a TV show that's the most like actual practicing law, give me one that might stand out for a reason.
Legally Blonde, actually.
Really?
I know that's not a law firm, but some of what's shown there with the law school classes, and maybe I'm picking that too because it was kind of inspiring to me. Like, if Elle Woods can do it, I can do it, surely, right?
Talk about, like I said, what advice would you give to somebody going into law school? They're thinking about becoming a lawyer because clearly there's a lot of folks that are saying, I want to go into law, that are not going to eventually become lawyers. What advice would you give them about what it takes to become a lawyer?
Yeah, you have to go in with a mindset that you're going to need to work hard and to study hard. And I think most people, probably do that by the time they get ready to apply for law school. But then also go in with the mindset, sometimes people get into it and they'll do an internship and think, this being a lawyer thing really isn't for me. Or, maybe they have trouble passing the bar exam because that's a terribly tough test. But law school is still worth it because there's so many other jobs aside from being an attorney. You can take your legal education and apply it to many different jobs outside of the legal field. So, yeah, I would say work hard, study hard, and perseverance for sure.
You mentioned study earlier. You learned how to study in law school. Like first semester, you had to change the way you studied. Tell me more about that. How did you have to change, and what was that? What was that?
Well, so I don't mean to sound bad at all, but undergrad, I skipped classes quite a bit.
The truth comes out.
I did not study like I should have. I was taking these lots of English classes, and so my homework would be reading a book and writing a paper, and so I didn't really have to buckle down and spend hours studying. And that was very different in law school. I had to, separate myself, get out of my apartment, go to the library, shut myself away, and focus more than I ever had to do in undergrad.
Were you part of study groups that divided any work at all, like they show on TVs and things like that?
I didn't do that. There definitely were study groups. I worked better just kind of on my own and isolating myself. My study buddies were a bottle of Mountain Dew and sunflower seeds.
Whatever kept you awake, right?
Right.
Talk about the bar exam. How tough is it, and how terrifying is it to take that?
Yeah, it's so tough. There's an essay portion that's specific to the state, and that part's, very doable and not quite as intimidating as they call it the multi-state multiple choice portion. And that's very hard because it's not just an A, B, or C answer. It's, then you get down to D and it'll say A and B. And then you get down to E and it'll say B, but not C. Even the way that the choices are structured is confusing. So yeah, the bar exam is terribly, terribly tough. I don't know that it really tests the skills that will tell you if somebody's going to be a good attorney or not, but it's what we have.
Yeah, it's the one exam that everybody knows about, the bar exam. So talk about how long did it take you to pass the bar exam, to study for it, and to pass it?
I spent the whole summer studying for it. The bar exam's typically administered at the end of July. So as soon as I graduated from my last year of law school in May, then you start bar exam prep courses all throughout the summer. I was lucky I passed on my first time, but I would say many people walk out of the bar exam and you think that you've just, bombed it, especially when we all went to a nearby bar after the bar exam and, having drinks with each other and celebrating being done. And then you start talking about the questions and you hear somebody say, well, I answered this. And you think in your head oh my God, I answered the complete opposite. But the
second guessing and the doubts all come in there. So if you don't pass it that time, you got to wait a whole nother year.
They actually administer it twice a year. Okay. So July, and then they have a February bar exam too. So
6 months is a long time to wait though, too.
It is.
I mean, that's a long time. So what defines a successful lawyer for you?
Somebody who is I think, dedicated to helping people. I think that was my primary goal when I was practicing. I really, when you have clients come into your office, they're usually not there for a happy situation. They're there because they need your help. So working with them to find the best solution possible to the problems that they were bringing to you. Aside from that, somebody who's very prepared, I would spend a lot of time making sure that I had all of my questions written out before trials, all my exhibits prepared, all my written motions done and filed. So I think that, level of preparedness really helps make you an effective attorney too.
There was no mention of money anywhere in that conversation.
Oh, yeah.
But it does come with a significant salary and things like that. Do you see any people out there that are just kind of in it for the money, or is that not possible in the law? If you become a lawyer, you have to have a level of dedication.
I think you have to have that level of dedication. I mean, sure, there's attorneys out there that are making really good money, but the time and effort that they put into it, it's deserved. And the education, the time that they spent, educating themselves to become good attorneys, I think they deserve those fees. But in Iowa, I've never run across an attorney who seemed primarily motivated by money. So I think we've got a really good legal community in our state that we should be proud of.
How mad does it make you when somebody makes a lawyer joke? Do you take it personally?
No.
No?
No, I really don't.
I don't know. When somebody makes a joke about something that hits kind of close to home, you tend to get a little irritated. I do anyway. So.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
You develop a thick skin.
Yes.
And I assume as a lawyer, you do the same thing, right?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would be going against, people that I would see in the grocery store or, at one of my children's games. So that there's going to be people out there who maybe don't like you, but, it's just kind of the nature of the job and separating yourself from that a little bit.
Talk about going into private practice, because you did that here in Carroll. Right?
Yep.
You went from clerking for judges to private practice, I assume?
So I did a year clerkship right after law school in Cedar Rapids. Then my husband and I moved to Des Moines because he got a job with a construction company in Des Moines. So I worked for a private firm in Des Moines for about a year and a half. And then I did the Court of Appeals for about 6 years as a staff attorney. And then, I had that dream of becoming a judge in the back of my head, and I knew that wasn't going to happen being a staff attorney on the Court of Appeals. And by then, my husband and I had moved back to Carroll, so I decided to get back into private practice. So I started with Eric New, Jeff Minnick, Frank Comito with their law firm here in town, and it was the best decision I ever made.
Describe what that's like, practicing law here in Carroll.
It is a general practice law firm. It's not like, the bigger law firms in the metropolitan areas. You're able to kind of focus on one thing as an attorney in those law firms because there's so many attorneys available. But a small rural law practice, you kind of have to wear a lot of different hats and be a little bit of an expert in everything, which can be intimidating, but also really interesting and exciting. I had a lot of people who would come to me with things that I'd never done before, I maybe wasn't comfortable with, but they trusted me to be able to figure it out and do it for them.
So you were a criminal lawyer, probably doing everything when you came back, right?
Yeah. So Des Moines, I did a lot of what's called court-appointed work. So defendants, anytime you're charged with a crime, if you don't have the means to pay for an attorney, the state will appoint one for you. So I did a lot of that work when I was in Des Moines. I didn't do any of that when I came back to Carroll. My criminal work here was more confined to, operating while intoxicated offenses and that sort of thing. But, some of the interesting things that I got to work on, Legendary Rye here in town, when they got up and going or wanted to get up and going, they came to see me to have me help them get their federal licensing and all of that. And I told them, I've never done this before. You should probably go somewhere else. In fact, I think I went with them to a different firm in Des Moines. Where
you tried to hand them off.
Yeah. And they were wonderful. Rich and Lisa. Both.
I know Rich.
Yep. They said, we want you to do it, and we know that you can do it. So that was one of the favorite things that I've ever done as an attorney.
Pretty cool to see where they're at now.
Yeah, it's great.
That is such a successful business there. So Talk about Carroll. You moved back to Carroll for a reason. Why? I know your husband, of course, clearly into Badding Construction. He was going to be taking over that family business.
Yep.
But what were the other factors that went into bringing you back to Carroll?
Yep. We moved back in January of 2010, and we had 2 young kids at the time. Our oldest was 3, and our youngest was a year and a half, 2 years old. So we were starting to look ahead. They're going to, be in school before we know it. Daycare is kind of difficult in Des Moines sometimes. So we decided to move back because my parents were here. We knew that they would be able to help us out. Tony's parents lived in Denison at the time. They've since moved to Panora. But we knew that we would have that family support here. We both had such great childhoods here. So we wanted our kids to have the same thing. And we just wanted that more of a small town, feel where they could ride their bikes around and, we know the parents of their friends and know the school that they're going to. So it's been everything we wanted. Yeah,
that comfort zone of being back in Carroll where familiarity, that means everything for a parent.
Yeah, it really does. It's so neat to have, some of my high school classmates to have their kids in my kids' classes. It's a cool thing.
What was the thing you missed about when you lived in Des Moines and things like that? What was one thing you missed coming back to Carroll?
Yeah.
Living in the bigger city.
I mean, the shopping, Target, our credit card bills went way down once we moved back here. The restaurants.
Tony didn't miss that.
No, he did not. I missed the restaurants a lot. There was such variety to be had in Des Moines. And then we were also really lucky in Des Moines. His 2 sisters, Tony's 2 sisters lived close by us when we were in Des Moines. So we would frequently have, dinners and things like that together. But they've since moved. His younger sister is in Baird right now, and then his older sister is in Grimes. So we're still close with them.
Do you guys ever see yourself leaving Carroll?
No.
Simple question there. Let's go back to the law and practicing of that. How long did you practice with your law firm here before being named a judge?
I was with that firm for about 6 years.
That's a pretty short amount of time before being named a judge. First of all, how do you get your name in to being a judge? Because not everybody, I assume everybody wants it, but not everybody gets it.
Yeah, so you have to apply. So we have a really neat system in Iowa. It's a merit-based selection system. So when there's an opening for a judge, whether it's a district associate judge, district court judge, or court of appeals or Supreme Court, they will advertise that opening. There's a long application that you fill out. It can be upwards of 30, 35 pages. You submit that to a nominating commission. There's some elected members and some appointed members by the governor. The commission will review those applications. At the district court level, they will select the nominees that will then go to the governor. And same at the court of appeals level. You have to, after you file your application, you have to interview in front of the full commission, and then they'll select a slate of nominees that they send to the governor, and then she makes the final selection. So,
I know when I was doing a little research on you that I Googled your name and videos came up of you testifying in front of the nominating committee and things like that. So
yeah.
That'd be kind of terrifying. You're putting yourself out there like that.
Yeah, it's absolutely terrifying. There's 17 members on the statewide nominating commission for the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. The interviews take place in front of all 17 members. You walk into the Supreme Court courtroom in Des Moines at the Judicial Branch building, and they're all seated around a table staring at you.
And you're at that one little desk.
Yep. You give kind of a little brief opening statement, and then the commissioners go around and they take turns asking you questions. So kind of feels like you're under a firing squad a little bit, although they were all very nice. Nobody is trying to ask you questions to trip you up. They're really searching for the best candidate, which I think is why our system is so good. I went to
So what are they looking for? Knowledge, temperament, what, everything?
Yeah. Yep. Both those things are at the top of their list. Temperament, especially for district court judges, you don't want somebody who's going to fly off the handle at people. You want somebody, again, who's a hard worker, because there's people whose cases are being heard and they're anxiously waiting for a decision. So you want somebody who's going to get their rulings out fast, somebody who's going to be decisive while at the same time being fair and listening to both sides. So yeah, they've got a daunting task ahead of them.
What is it like to have to decide a case? I mean, you've got people on either side that are arguing, they passionately believe on their side, they're telling the truth. How do you go about deciding that case?
Yeah. Some cases are easier than others. The hardest cases for me are the child custody cases and the termination of parental rights cases. Those are really tough. The custody cases, especially because they can be close. You have two loving parents who want to see this child as much as they can, and you have to make a decision about what's going to be in that child's best interest. Just hearing a snippet of these people's lives. So those are really tough ones.
Yeah, you get a couple minutes to hear a few questions and answers in their life, and then you got to decide.
Yep.
I couldn't imagine doing that. What's a typical day like for you? I mean, what do you do? Are most of your days spent back in your office, or are they spent in a courtroom, or where?
My days are really boring right now in my current position on the appellate court. Primarily what I do is research and writing. So my typical day, I'll get up, the kids will get up themselves while they're getting ready for school. I'll work a little bit from my home office. I'll drop the kids off at school, I'll come to the office here. I'll do more research and writing. I usually leave around noon or so. I'll go for a run over lunch or, some other exercise just to clear my head a little bit. And then in the afternoon, I go back to my office at home and I work from home until the kids get off the bus and then kind of run them around to their different activities.
Yeah.
So,
how many hours a week do you think you put it? I mean, it could vary, I'm sure, for a lot of things, right?
yeah, the Court of Appeals is so busy. We decide between 1,000 to 1,100 cases per year.
Whoa.
Between 9 judges. And then we have some senior judges who help us out as well. So each judge on the court is expected to author about 100 decisions per year. Plus, we sit on panels of 3. So the cases that we're not authoring, we're reading the other panel members' cases and deciding those. So I very frequently will work on the weekends or early in the morning. So it's a lot of hours, but it doesn't feel like work all the time because I really enjoy what I do.
I don't know how you focus, having to read that much material and things like that. How do you do that?
My system is that I take notes as I'm reading. So I have legal pads that are just filled with my handwriting because it keeps me kind of engaged with what I'm reading. And then I can also go back and look at the parts that I've written down. I think I'm unusual in that. I think a lot of other judges on our court will go through and actually everything we read is on the computer now. It's all electronically filed. I think a lot of the other judges on the court will go through and kind of highlight those documents on the computer itself. But I just find I pay more attention and remember things better if I handwrite it.
If there's a tough decision that you've got to make, does it cause you to lose sleep or anything like that? Does it affect you personally?
Occasionally. I've gotten much better as I've gotten more experience as an attorney and then as a judge of kind of separating myself from work and being done with it when I go to bed tonight. But there are certainly cases where, you kind of lie awake thinking about it.
You wish you'd rather not known any of this stuff, right?
Right.
So, yeah, the workload's got to be nonstop and never ending.
It is. I'm the type of person, I like having a to-do list, but then I like checking things off of it. So sometimes I'll put like easy stuff on my to-do list, like email John Ryan and then check,
Which you were very good at, by the way.
I think I could have been better, but.
Okay. I was trying to be nice, but no, you were great about it.
But our case list, our cases pending list for the court is never done. Like just when I think that I'm getting a little bit caught up, then we call it a transfer, but a new, transfer of cases, and it just adds more to your caseload. So
what about your future? How long do you see yourself being a judge? I mean, is there anything that you want to do beyond this? You got career goals like everybody else, right?
It's bad to say, but this was my career goal. This is my dream job. So as of right now, I don't have any aspirations beyond this. Maybe in 10 years, I'll be like, I'm totally bored and I need something new. But I just can't see that happening because, we get the routine cases, but there's so many new and interesting things that come along every day. It always keeps me engaged and keeps my mind working. And then on top of that, I work with some of the best people ever. I really, really enjoy my colleagues. We try to make it, like I said before, a fun work environment. We have court dinners once a month. We have lunches together. We really make it a point to get along with each other.
Are all those people here in Carroll, or where are they?
No, we're spread throughout the state. So of the 9 judges on the Court of Appeals, I'm the only one in Carroll. Judge Julie Schumacher is in Schleswig. She's probably the next closest to me. We've got Judge Greer in Marshalltown. We've got a newly appointed one in Okoboji. We've got a couple over on the eastern side of the state. So we're all spread out. But almost every month, we have oral arguments in Des Moines at the Judicial Branch building. So we'll all get together there for those arguments and see each other in person. Aside from that, we have court conferences every 2 weeks, and we'll do that by Zoom. So we'll see each other then as well.
So if the governor came in and said right now, I want to put you on the Supreme Court of Iowa, is the answer yes? You got to say yeah, don't you? Would that be the next step for you?
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty impressed I got a judge to come on my podcast. So if I can get a Supreme Court judge, you know.
Well, you can contact Matt McDermott, Justice
All right.
Matt McDermott.
I won't.
He's a Carroll native. He's very proud of being from Carroll. He lives in Des Moines now, but he's on the Supreme Court.
Okay, we're done with the law and we're done with all that stuff. We're going to get to some really just bizarre questions and some guilty pleasure questions. So let's start with that. What's a guilty pleasure of yours when you're not being a judge, you're not, being a lawyer? What do you do? What's a guilty pleasure of yours?
Almost every night before I go to bed, I have a Reese's peanut butter cup, and it has to be one of the special holiday shapes.
Okay.
Those are my favorite, and so I'll stockpile those throughout the year because after between Easter and Halloween, there's no special holiday shapes, so I'll stockpile them.
So your season's coming up.
Yeah,
Halloween.
It is. And my kids know not to touch them, although they steal them sometimes.
What's your pet peeve?
Oh.
What's going to drive you crazy quicker than anything?
My kids leaving their shoes out, not putting them away in their cubbies. And my husband, too. They all just kick them off at the door, and it just drives me crazy. Just pick them up and put them in your drawer.
Do you like to cook? Do you like to do things when you're at home? What do you like to cook?
Yep, I love to cook. I try to make, different things every night for my kids, although they love pasta the most. But I have this food blog that I go to all the time, Half Baked Harvest, it's called.
Mm-hmm.
I make a lot of her recipes. But we like to eat Mexican, Chinese food. A lot of different things.
So which one won't you go to? What food don't you eat?
I eat almost anything, really, honestly.
You don't have anything on the nut that you don't want to?
My mom loves liver and onions. I would not eat that. But
I don't mind liver and onions, but you got to put up with the smell.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
I think that gets a lot of people there. You said you do a lot of jogging, things like that.
Yep.
You'll go running. What's your jam? Do you listen to things while you're running?
I listen to podcasts.
Do you?
Yep. I listen to, you'd think that I wouldn't, just given my line of work, but I listen to a lot of murder podcasts, cold cases, things like that.
They were kind of the original ones that just exploded the whole format.
Yeah. Yep. So I love podcasts. I love reading, running, biking, all of that stuff, going to my kids' games, watching them play soccer. I still wouldn't say after all these years that I really know what's going on with soccer, but
Nobody does. Nobody does. I don't care if they say they do or not. So Have you gone on RAGBRAI? You said you're a biker.
Yes. We went last year when it came through Carroll.
Okay.
Not the full week. We just did Carroll to Ames, and then my husband and one of his friends did Ames to Des Moines, right? Was that the next stop?
Yep.
Yep.
How'd you like it?
It was great, although I will say that bikers are not quite as nice and encouraging as runners are. We got yelled at a few times, probably
Really?
because we didn't know the protocol of, biker on, biker off.
Oh, we bike all the time, I guess. So we always think the bikers are the nicest people out there. Well, we got work to do, guys, as bikers out there. So what relaxes you? You talk about reading a lot. Do you like Sudoku, crosswords, Wordle?
I do
Wordle would be I would pick that one for you.
Yep, I do Wordle. My kids make fun of me. They say I take way too long to get it done, but I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to miss it.
Accuracy counts here on this one.
Yeah.
Pancakes or waffles?
Pancakes.
What story does your family always tell about you? One that you just said they would just as soon have them retire.
Oh man. Gosh, I don't know if they have a good one that they always tell, but I have no sense of direction at all. So they like to test me on that, which way is north. I used to think it was whichever way I was facing forward. I know that's not true now, but I really really have no idea.
What's an unpopular opinion that you have? Like maybe like pumpkin spice lattes or something like that. I don't know. Is there something that you like that a lot of other people don't like?
Oh gosh. I don't know. That's a tough one. I like blue cheese and olives together, but I don't think that's that crazy.
That's weird. That's a little out there. I would not do it.
You wouldn't?
No, I wouldn't do that one. But what's a bucket list thing what's the next thing on your bucket list?
I want to go back to Europe sometime. I was really fortunate being able to go to Europe when I was in law school and spend about a month there. And then my husband and I kind of backpacked around and traveled around. And I haven't been back since. So that's on my bucket list, anywhere over there.
Ultimate vacation. Where's the best vacation you guys have taken?
Oh, we've taken some really great ones. I think the most recent great one was Montana. We went skiing with the kids at Big Sky, and that was really, really fun.
So are you more of a beach or a mountain person then?
Well, I like them both. So one,
not going to turn down either one of them.
Right. But as I get older, I was never a good skier. As I get older, I'm even worse. So probably the beach, because I can just lay there and read a book and tan.
What's your favorite smell?
Vanilla.
Okay. And the best movie you've ever seen?
Oh, probably Godfather.
Part 2?
Part 1.
Part 1.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I love The Godfather. I always turn it on whenever it's there. So
yeah,
you're done.
All right.
Your podcast is in the books here. Thank you so much, Your Honor. I'll say that because it's been great talking to you. I mean, it's been great. I didn't know you before this.
Yeah.
I had never met you before. I had emailed you. So it's been great getting to know you. And I can tell you that you love what you're doing and you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you so much for asking me to be a part of this. It's an honor for sure.
Gina Badding, once again, appeals court judge, our latest guest here on Must Know People.